Fourth Avenue to Tech would drive. O'Leary to Key. It's WreckTalk.
What is going on, everyone, and welcome to WreckTalk. And today we're talking about the Clemson Tigers, a team I kind of have an affinity for. You know, like, I'm a diehard Tech fan. You're going to be hard-pressed to find a bigger Georgia Tech fan than me. This should be a rivalry. It really isn't, because Tech hasn't held up their end of the bargain. But I don't know that I've ever met a Clemson fan that I didn't like. Maybe that'll change this year. Maybe that'll change in the comment section. We'll see. But look, anyone who's anybody is going to be predicting Clemson to win the ACC for good reason. I mean, not only have they dominated it for the past 10 or 15 years in the fashion that Florida State fans seem to think their team has. We already made that video, though. You can leave your comment below as to why your feelings matter to anybody. But let's look. We're going to look at what Clemson did last year, what they're bringing in, what they're losing, and then we're going to predict their record at the end of the video. So let's just get into it. Last year, they were both fourth in scoring offense and scoring defense. Total offense, they were third in the ACC, only behind Miami and Syracuse. And those are two teams that had historically good years. The problems start to arise on defense. Total defense, they're ranked ninth behind teams like Duke, Georgia Tech, Boston College. This should not be the case. One of the staples of Clemson's team is usually that defensive front, right? Pass defense, they're pretty good. Third behind Florida State and Duke. My God. Florida State somehow was first in pass defense in the conference last year. Go figure that. Rush defense, though. If you're a Clemson fan, where do you think you were in the conference in rush defense? 16th. Only Florida State had a worse rush defense than you last year. And this is curious. Obviously, I don't watch a ton of Clemson football. I watch some. It's head-scratching me, though, as dominant as Clemson's defensive fronts have been in the past, that they struggled to stop the run so much last year. So passing offense, third. Rushing offense, sixth. Probably need to be a little better in the run game this year as well. Went 10-4 last year, 8-1 in the ACC, good enough to get you in the title game and win it, with losses to UGA, which was a pretty bad one, 34-3. Louisville, which I shouldn't say is a really bad one, because Louisville is one of the better ACC teams. They're probably the third or fourth best ACC team this year. I'm going to preview them next. But they beat you at home. And they beat you for the first time in program history, I believe, 33-21. And then you lose to South Carolina, your rival, 17-14. Something about that rivalry, now it alternates the away team as winning it. And then obviously a playoff game, you lose to Texas, 38-24. And I might get a lot of hate comments from Clemson fans. For the regular season, all right, so I'm not talking about the ACC title. For the regular season, what was Clemson's best win last year? In fact, I've got it pulled up here. What was Clemson's best win? Virginia Tech, Pitt. Certainly not Florida State. So you kind of get my point. I'm not at all crapping on Clemson, but they didn't really have that marquee win. Obviously, they win the ACC title game. They get a playoff bid. Yada, yada, yada. Now, what is Clemson bringing back? Most important thing, Cade Klubnik. And I don't know that people really realize, like, people are saying, oh, Cade Klubnik, Heisman candidate this year, yada, yada, yada. I don't think people realize how good Cade Klubnik really is. He's top 5 in program history in virtually every stat. In fact, I'd have to look. Think of the quarterbacks that have been through Clemson. Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence. He's up there with those guys. So he's been absolutely elite. PFF ranked number 1 quarterback coming back this year. Looking at his stats last year, 63.4% completion percentage, 3,639 yards, 36 touchdowns on 6 interceptions, and 463 yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground. Dominant. Over 7,000 yards in a career. 57 touchdowns, coming up on 1,000 yards rushing in a career, 13 touchdown. Cade Klubnik, if any top quarterbacks in the ACC list that don't have Cade Klubnik at the top just don't make sense, right? Now, you also bring back some stellar wide receivers, Antonio Williams, Bryant Wesco Jr., 2 top 10 wide receivers in the country, according to PFF. In fact, Clemson is the only team in the PFF rankings that have a top 5 quarterback room and a top 5 wide receiver room. So that's going to be really interesting to see this year. Clemson's offense should be electric, especially we'll look into their schedule and who they have to play. What are you bringing in? You have the 28th ranked recruiting class last year. Let me repeat that because I didn't believe it. 28th ranked recruiting class, 4th in the ACC. Clemson got out-recruited by Georgia Tech last year. This should not happen. Well, can you make up for it in the portal? No, 118th ranked portal class. This is no surprise. Dabo only marginally uses the portal now, and that's a great change from how he's viewed it in the past. However, in your class, you do bring in Amari Adams, 5-star defensive lineman. And in my opinion, when you look at true freshmen that could come in and make an impact immediately, defensive line is the number one place. I think that's the easiest to do. You also bring in a 4-star edge rusher out of Virginia. Out of the portal, you bring in Jeremiah Alexander, a linebacker from Alabama, Will Helt, 4-star edge rusher from Purdue, and Tristan Smith, 4-star wide receiver out of Southeast Missouri State. So, the big question for Clemson is going to be, can you stop the run, right? Clemson's going to be good even if they're not good at stopping the run. But if they want to go improve over last season, make a bigger step into the playoffs, they've got to improve that rush defense. Now, they do bring in new defensive coordinator Tom Allen from Penn State, which is a massive hire. That tells you just kind of where the state of the program at Clemson, that they're able to make that move. And this is a thought I had. This might be where the Clemson hate comments come from. If you can't stop the run, might you have a Miami-like season this year where really good on offense, dominant, best offense in the ACC, but because you can't stop the run, you stumble against teams that are good at it, like Georgia Tech or, I don't know, Virginia Tech's generally good run team that knocks you out of the ACC championship game, which would probably knock you out of the playoffs. Tell me why that couldn't happen if your run defense is not improved. However, it should be much improved. You know, was it a personnel issue last year or was it a schematic coaching issue? We're going to find out this year with Tom Allen coming in. So let's look at the 2025 Clemson schedule. Now, we all know we have some monstrous week 1 games. Tigers versus Tigers. You will be hosting LSU Saturday, August 30th, primetime slot, 7:30, top 10 matchup. Now, because I'm such a fan of Pigskin Pete, Pigskin Pete is the premier Clemson YouTuber, in my opinion. I have learned that LSU has only borrowed this name. It was Clemson who was first. So you're going to fight for the Tigers here. This is a tough game. And 2 teams that are more similar than you would think, like LSU also, they were dead last in the SEC in stopping the run. So they struggle to stop the run on D. Both have really good quarterbacks and electrifying pass offenses. 2 teams that are even week 1, I think you've got to go with the home team. So I'm gonna pick Clemson to beat LSU week 1, but that's going to be an exciting game, one I'm certainly going to be watching. Nothing to talk about with Troy. You're going to go 2-0 into the Georgia Tech game. Now, every Clemson fan I've talked to is scared of this game for some reason. If you're a Clemson fan, do you know the last time Georgia Tech beat Clemson? Not in Atlanta. I'm talking about period. Think a second. It was Deshaun Watson's freshman year in 2014, and your boy WreckTalk was there. And we probably only won that game because Deshaun Watson got hurt toward the end of the first quarter of that game. And what was it? Cole Stout, I think, came in at quarterback, and then everyone was tweeting Cole Stout in a trash can. So that's fun. Again, this really hasn't been a rivalry game. Clemson's obviously dominated it. I mean, that's a 9-year drought for Tech in this series. However, Tech is improving. Tech's identity is running the ball, even down to their quarterback, Haynes King. I think he would much prefer cut up and run it than throw it downfield. If the issues you have stopping the run were not corrected, or not markedly so corrected, because Georgia Tech's whole offense is set up to expose teams that are weak on defense against the run. I think Tech has a good shot at winning this game, and probably does if that's the case. However, I am not going to pick Georgia Tech to beat Clemson until they do it. It's been 9 years. You got to do it. Clemson is hands down a more talented team. They're probably a full letter grade more talented at almost every position. Bobby Dodd has not been, the toughest road environment for teams. Not that I'm trying to dunk on my own team. It is what it is. But Pigskin Pete will be coming down to Casa de Rec to see this game. So that should be fun. But I think you'll be 3-0 going into the Syracuse game. Now, I've already previewed Syracuse. I have Syracuse going 5-7 this year. Syracuse just loses too much. I don't think there's a world in which Syracuse, losing everything they did, goes to Death Valley and gets a win. Fran Brown, it might be showerless for some time, so maybe no one wants to stand around him. But I think you start off the season 4-0. Probably a pretty well-placed bye here going into at North Carolina. Now, I've made no bones about, I think the Bill Belichick hire is awful. I think it's stupid. I think it makes zero sense. I think there's a very real possibility he's not the coach by the time this season ends. I think all the stuff with his girlfriend is silly and it's a distraction. And the last time people said, all this off the field distraction stuff doesn't affect on the field, we called those people Florida State fans. Look what happened to them. I think you go into Chapel Hill and beat the ever-loving soul out of North Carolina. I think you beat the will to coach out of Bill Belichick. Let's just look at the series history. You're 40-19 up in the series. You've got a 6-game winning streak against North Carolina. The last win in Chapel Hill for North Carolina against Clemson was 2010, and that's not going to change in 2025 either. I've got you undefeated going on the road at Boston College. Now, on the ACC show this week, I don't know when this video will come out, I said I think Boston College is the most difficult team to gauge this year. I think Bill O'Brien's a good coach. They got rid of a trash can quarterback that Florida State took, so that's nice. But it wouldn't surprise me if Boston College won 4 games or 8 this year. Neither one of those things would really surprise me. However, Clemson is a known, right? You're 21-9 in the series. You've got a 12-game winning streak. Last win, again, was 2010. Boston College beat you in Massachusetts. I just think Clemson's too good. I've got you 6-0 rematching the ACC title game with SMU. Luckily, you get them at home. Now, SMU had the benefit of a very lax schedule last year. I don't think they make an ACC title appearance without the benefit of that schedule. However, they did give you a damn good game in the ACC title and came damn close to winning that thing. So I think SMU takes a step back this year. I know they return their starting quarterback that's pretty good, top 5 probably in the conference, and that Jennings kid. I just don't think SMU has the horses to come to Death Valley and put one up on Clemson. So I've got you undefeated going into your second bye week and hosting Duke for homecoming. Now, Duke is not the team they were 10 years ago. Duke is not the team they were under Cutcliffe. They've made 2 of the better hires in the conference back-to-back, more than likely. They hired Mike Elko from Texas A&M, who hired him right back after paying Jimbo Fisher $70 million or whatever they paid him. And then they hired a retread ACC coach in Manny Diaz, who's proven to be a hell of a coach at Duke too. Duke has put up, what were they? They won 9 or 10 games last year. I think they won 9 games last year. They lose both their starting quarterback and their backup quarterback, and then pay a reported $4 million to Tulane's quarterback to come in. Duke can be a tough out. You ask Clemson if Duke can be a tough out, right? With that Leonard cat and Nat. That being said, I might feel differently if this game was in Durham or if this was a weird Friday night game, road game or something. I think you beat Duke here. I think you're undefeated going into the Florida State game. Now, this is Saturday, November 8th. I'll tell you how you know how bad Florida State is going to be this year. They don't want to talk about football in the offseason. They want to talk about lawsuits. They want to talk about how much they hate the ACC. And then after they talk about hating the ACC, they want to talk about their ACC titles like it means shit to them. It's the most hilarious thing ever. They bring in what could be the worst quarterback in the ACC, and that's not even me trashing them. The guy got benched and quit from Boston College. This game isn't going to be close. I think they might be 2 wins coming into this game, and I think Clemson, you might beat them 70-0. I really think that if you want to, you're going to win this game by as much as you want to. Florida State's absolutely awful. They're an embarrassment to everything that is football or rational. So I've got you undefeated going into the Louisville game. I went back and forth on this. Because you've only played Louisville 9 times, and they've only beat you once, and that was last year. You are more talented than Louisville. You are a better program than Louisville. However, they came into your house last year and hit you in the mouth pretty good and took a win from you. I think Brom's a good coach. I think he's a hell of a coach. They bring in Miller Moss. And if anyone could get the most out of a quarterback, it's Jeff Brom. In fact, Jeff Brom might be the best developer of quarterbacks in the country, if we're just being honest. Think of someone you think is better at developing quarterbacks than Jeff Brom is. Did you know who Tyler Shook was before last year and he got drafted near the top of the board? No, you didn't. The man knows what he's doing. And honestly, I do think you win this game, but I have you taking an L here because I don't think you go undefeated this year. You have to prove to me that you've fixed your issues stopping the run. So I've got you taking an L on the road to Louisville, only because I need you to take a loss, though. I'm really high on Clemson this year. Furman has a special place in my heart. It's a Baptist school in Spartanburg, South Carolina, right? Every year for 4 years in a row when I played high school ball, we would go to camp at Furman, and Bobby Lamb was the coach, and he would give the same talk every year before camp broke. Had nothing to do with football. He'd say, all right, come here, boys, listen here. You see all these girls at the tennis camp with little short skirts? I know they look good. Lord knows I know they look good now. You ain't got to tell me that. Can't talk to them, though. So he basically give us this like sexual assault weirdo talk. So that was kind of cool. Anyways, you're going to beat Furman. And I got you 1 loss going into the South Carolina game. Now, if the trend holds, you should beat South Carolina in Columbia. You hold the series record here, 73-44. Clemson has lost 2 of the last 3 to South Carolina. You know, you went through, 7 in a row or so you won. And all of a sudden, our boy Beamer's turned things around or is turning things around at South Carolina. South Carolina is one of those teams you don't want to play if you're a good team. I would put Georgia Tech in that camp too. So you kind of got 2 teams like that. I'm not saying Georgia Tech is as good as South Carolina at all. I don't think that. Lenore Sellers is a hell of a quarterback. Almost beat you by himself last year, didn't he? It seems like the road team wins this game, but I got you taking a loss to South Carolina here. However, that only gives you one ACC loss. Only one ACC loss. Look, Williams-Brice can be a tough place to play. For as bad as they've been in the past, their fans show up and show out, and they've got something to show up for this year. I think they'll be ready. I do think they get the win over you and rip off 2 in a row. Sorry, but you will make an ACC title berth. I got you going 10-2. I do think you win the ACC title. I'm not going to say who I think you're playing, not the purpose of this video. And I do think you win at least one playoff game. I do think you'll be that good. So let me know what you think in the comments. How good do you think Clemson is? Where am I right? Where am I wrong? Why am I stupid? I love reading those comments. I eat them up. I eat little pieces of shit like that for breakfast. You eat little pieces of shit for breakfast? No.